You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to the Dressage Today podcast, sponsored this month by Tribute, Equine Nutrition, KPP Insulin Wise, and Farnam Endure Gold. This month, we've got the pleasure of interviewing Sue Kolstad, a USDF S judge, a competitor, and just an overall amazing person. Sue has been a professional in the world of dressage since 1977. Over these almost 50 years, she has owned or managed several different farms, trained several horses to Grand Prix, and coached students to many championships, medals, and young rider competitions. Sue explored many disciplines before settling down on dressage, including hunters, jumpers, eventing, endurance, driving, and Western. But she found dressage to be her greatest inspiration and now spends most of her time judging and teaching clinics, both at home and away. Sue is still actively showing and selling horses. During her formative years, Dr. Max Galeweiler was one of her greatest mentors. It was an honor for Sue to know that Dr. Galeweiler initiated the Century Ride and the Century Club. And she also completed her Century Club ride. And as she is not only an amazing horse person, but a talented artist and a dressage historian, she drew his horse Prince that Dr. Galeweiler did his ride on. So in addition to all of that, of course, she has her bronze and silver and gold USDF medals. She is a going concern, and we just know that you're going to love listening to her. So our interview ran over our normal amount of time. We talked with Sue about ringcraft, which I don't know that I'd ever heard that phrase before or if Aviva coined it, but I think it's a great phrase talking about looking at different things, options if your test is not perfect, which of course we all know no test is ever perfect, and talking to Sue about her choices. If you had to have one mistake over another, where does she find the places where you can give them more points? Where's the better mistake to make? So it was just a fascinating interview. It was a longer one than normal. So we are not doing anything with Aviva and I this month. Please don't be disappointed, because we know as soon as you get into the interview with Sue, you're just going to be like, oh, I'm so glad I had all of this to listen to. So enjoy the interview. As always, remember, if you like what we're doing, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and hit that like button.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
At Tribute Equine Nutrition, caring for horses has always come first. As a family-owned company, safely making feed right here in the USA, they're celebrating America's 250th anniversary by supporting programs that make a difference through horses. Every bag of Tribute sold helps support PATH International's Equine Services for Heroes programs, helping veterans through equine-assisted services. They've also introduced limited edition patriotic horse treats for summer. Are you ready to try Tribute? Start with a free personalized feeding plan and your first bag free at tributeequinenutrition.com.
This episode is brought to you by Farnam, celebrating 80 years of trusted equine care, and Endure Gold Killer Fly and Mosquito Control, a new fly spray for horses. When your horse needs to stay focused, it helps to take flies out of the equation. Endure Gold uses brand new EPA-approved ingredients never before seen in equine care to annihilate flies, ticks, and mosquitoes. This advanced formula delivers fast knockdown and up to 14 days of fly protection you can trust. Discover fly protection with Endure Gold from Farnam.
Welcome to the Dressage Today podcast. This month we are sponsored by Tribute Equine Nutrition, Farnam Endure Gold Fly Spray, and KPP Insulin Wise. Aviva, we just keep getting more and more.
More and more sponsors. I
More and
know.
more
3 for
sponsors.
1.
It's amazing. We are lucky to be joined today by Sue Kolstad. She is a USDF S judge. That is the highest ranking dressage judge you can reach at a national level. She is a competitor. She is a trainer and a clinician. She wears many hats, including being a talented artist. She just is a going concern because she has achieved her century ride and is still out there getting it done. So Sue, welcome to the show.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you today.
Yeah. So let's dig in. Tell us where it all started.
Okay, well, it started with the Lone Ranger on television when TVs were black and white. I think I was 2 years old. And I would run around on my hands and knees and rear up in the air and pretend I was a horse to hi-ho silver.
That is awesome.
And I just, I really truly believe that there's a horse gene and it runs in certain families.
Mm-hmm.
And in my family, it seems to skip generations. My great grandfather was horse crazy. And then I came along and now I have a grandniece.
And she is horse crazy?
Everyone in my family, yes. And she lives in Hawaii and I'm just having a blast bringing her along. And she is fulfilling something for me and my family because my whole family thought I was just crazy and nuts. And my parents would tell me that if I had a horse, I'd be sick of it after 2 weeks once I knew how much work they were. And then they finally gave up and said, well, when you grow up, you can have as many horses as you want.
Oh, that was
and
not
then
the right
throughout
thing to say.
So I did. And throughout my life with my family, seeing me in my horse world, in my crazy horse world and everything that I've done with the horses, they would just say, oh, Sue and her horses. And then if I had a horse show and couldn't attend a family function, they would be resentful. And then when I said I had to work, I had a job, they looked at it from a different perspective. But once I got this grandniece and she became horse crazy, all of a sudden things changed in the whole family. And all of a sudden my brother, her grandfather, was telling me about all these horse people they would meet at the horse shows. And I'd go, and all these women that had horses and they just embraced it. And now she has actually made my family understand me. It's a wonderful thing.
Aww.
And it's really cool. She's in Pony Club and she's come twice to the Kentucky Horse Park and participated in Pony Club championships with a group from Hawaii. And we've brought horses. My students have let her team use horses in my barn and I've coached them down at the horse park. And it's kind of like a what goes around comes around circle of love. And now they're looking to buy her a horse and I want to help her find one to take to Hawaii.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a lot of horses over there. So you got to find something good here. It'll be imported. She can say it's imported. That's the great thing.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I rode my pretend horses to school with my neighbor girl and I didn't really get involved in horses until I was a senior in college. And I always make the joke that if I'd have gotten started with horses sooner, I might not have finished college. And so I was a teacher, and so I taught school for a number of years while I started my riding stable. And then I branched out from there. And I started out Western, and I was doing barrel racing and pole bending and not really interested in Western pleasure. And then my girlfriend that rode her pretend horse to school with me went to college in Minneapolis. I lived in northern Wisconsin at the time.
Okay.
And she got into dressage. And one day she said, Susan, you just have to come see dressage. And at that point in my life, I knew what leads were from the ground. I could look at a horse and see the lead. And today I wonder if I actually saw the hind and the front, but I did see the front. But I couldn't tell what leads were when I was on the horse yet. And I went up to Minneapolis and I saw Lois Heyerdahl and Marianne Ludwig riding against each other in competition and at fourth level. And my terminology was they were doing tiny little circles in the wrong lead on purpose and flying changes in a straight line every third and fourth stride. And I didn't even know horses could do such a thing.
And your eyes were opened.
And that was the God slap for me. And I became obsessed and determined, and I've accomplished more than I ever dreamed of. But as I have been accomplishing it, I kept, raising my dreams and wanting more. Cool. How's that sound?
I think that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go through judge education?
Well, I was competing with a friend of mine, and they offered a judge's program in Minneapolis, and I signed up for it because I thought, well, I don't really want to be a judge. I'm not even interested in that. And I didn't have high enough self-esteem to even think I'd be any good at it. But if I take the training, I'll learn what the judge wants to see, and it'll make me a better competitor, and I'll be able to get better scores in my riding. So that was my reason for signing up for it. And that was before the L program. So long time ago. And it was in the early 80s, I think 82 or 81. And I got my first judge's certification, small R, I think in 1983. And I was a small R. And then I continued for a long time. And I actually got to Grand Prix before I even went for my large R.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I really wasn't interested in progressing in my judging. I was more obsessed with riding and competing and training horses. And I started going to Europe and importing horses. And then I started judging a little more. And there was a gentleman in Chicago. I lived in Indianapolis at the time, Pete Margolis, and he ran Lamplight back before it became wild and crazy. It was still named Lamplight, but it wasn't like it is now back then. And he would bring me there to judge a lot. And he kept saying, Sue, you've got to get your large R. You've just got to get it. So he pushed me hard enough. So I got my large R. And then I was happy with that. And I had nothing pushing me. I wasn't pushing myself to advance in my judging. And because I was still competing, and I had another Grand Prix horse, and I was showing in the CDIs, and I was doing really well. And it was a big competition year. And it was a Pan Am year even. And I wasn't trying out for the Pan Am games, but all of a sudden I was like on the list, not the short list, but the long list. And
it was a list. I mean, that's good. You were on a list.
Yeah. And I wasn't even trying, but then, I was competing in Florida, and that was before you had to be a Grand Prix. You had to have Grand Prix scores to get your S. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of my friends and colleagues, and they were like, Sue, you should be here. And I was like, I'm having too much fun showing.
And the judges program takes up a lot of time.
Yeah. And then I had a real bad accident and broke my neck.
Oh.
And then I thought, oh boy,
I need a backup.
Yeah, if I'm going to get old and still take care of myself, maybe I better look at getting an S. So by the time I got my S, I was already 57 years old. And back then they had an age limit for going on for your eye. You had to be 55 before you could go for your eye. And you had to have had your S for 3 years before you could apply for it. So I was way past the age limit. And and I went through the program. It was the first program they had that required you to have all your scores at Grand Prix. And I had already competed, 4 or 5 horses at Grand Prix, and I had the scores on all of them. And Mike Osinski was in that program with me. So was Bill Warren. And
we love them.
Yeah, I don't know. And Mike and I even had a little talk recently about this, that we went to England, to Olympia, and that was the show where Charlotte Desjardins broke Totilus's record. And Mike and I were there together, and I was like, "Are you going to go for your eye, Mike? Are you going to go for it?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know, Sue. I'm scared." And I said, "Oh, Mike, do it for me, because I can't do it, and I wish I could." And now to see, where he is. I mean, he was just judging Aachen, and I was just there last week.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Pretty great.
Well, even without an I, though, as an S, you get to do some pretty cool things. Where are some of the most exciting places you've been, or the most exciting shows you've judged?
You know what? I have to say this one. I just love them all. I'm like, I
whichever one you're at is the best.
Exactly, because there's always something really special at every show I go to. And there's a rider that I see and I think, oh, we as a judge, we're the guardians of the sport.
Yep.
And we are out there to make the sport better. And where do you see the people that really want to get better? You see them everywhere at the grassroots. And I don't think anybody ever comes to a show and enters a class that's too hard for them because they want to make the judge angry. I think
that's a good way.
Yeah.
They have a genuine, real reason for entering above the level they should be showing at. So I always try to make comments for the horse's sake. And I try to say it in a way that makes the rider think, oh, how can I help my horse and get my horse to be better? Or how can I achieve something, to be able to do this better? And that's pretty much my attitude for judging. And I want to be the best that I can be at what I do. And I'm always looking for education to improve myself. And I know I make a lot of mistakes, and I beat myself up when I do. And then when I talk to my other colleagues, they all do the same thing. So we're all in the same boat.
We're all human. And I have to say, I have scribed for you a lot, Sue, and I've not seen mistakes. I think you're one of the best judges that I know. And I think anybody who rides under you is lucky to get your feedback. So, but I love you. So
Thank you.
But what you're saying is kind of a nice segue into why we invited you on.
Yes.
We want to talk a little bit about ringcraft. And God knows, as a judge and as a competitor, you certainly know the arena. There are so many people, as you said, who show above where they should be, or who are making mistakes in the ring that are easy to fix, that would improve their scores. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things that people can do to maximize their success actually in the ring.
Okay, I'll try. First of all, we have to divide that into 2 different categories. One And the reason I'm picking this one first is because it just happened very recently when I was judging, that the rider was going along having a really good ride, and then something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the something went wrong, it changed the rider's whole mojo.
Yeah.
And from that point on, she didn't ride the same.
Yeah.
And so that's one area that riders need to learn, that when something goes wrong, you fix it within that movement, and then you say to yourself, okay, I have to make up for this on the next one. I have to make the next thing better to make up for the little mistake. But you have to let that mistake go and not let it do like the domino effect where it causes one after another after another. And I do see that happen a lot. Another thing I do see happen is when the horse starts to take a wrong lead and then they correct it and they get the right lead, or the horse does something, that it shouldn't do, and the rider has to correct it real quickly, the horse gets upset.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the horse gets upset, then it's all over. So sometimes that tells me that that's a training method that rider has with that horse. And I notice that. So those are things I notice when I'm judging. And I try to write something in the comments about that afterwards, so that they can learn that I observed that. And they should be aware that the horse is either overly sensitive to making a mistake, and they should teach their horse not to be that worried, or they should not be so worried when they make a mistake because it's only one movement and they've got to let that go and go on and go forward.
Don't you think, Sue, though, that one of the things about the rider making a mistake or something happening, what I see is that a rider will make a mistake and they don't know where the scores go, where the movements start and end. So, for instance, they break and they never bother they're so close to the end of whatever it is that they never pick up the lead again. So they get penalized for the movement where they broke. They get penalized for the downward transition.
Yes. The example, and this happens so often, is they've got the canter on the 20-meter circle, and then it's between like B and F, your trot. And so the horse breaks right before it finishes the canter, and it's trotting. So now it gets to the letter B in the trot. So that means the canter circle, which ends at B and should still be cantering, gets a bad score because the horse broke. However, now you need to do a transition from canter to trot between B and F. So if you don't pick the canter back up and show a trot transition, that score is going to be even lower than the circle where the horse broke. And people don't realize that. And so it really would behoove riders to learn where scores start and end, so they can fix a problem within the movement before it gets to the next movement where there's a whole nother score to be gained or lost.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Accuracy is so important, and it's not just the accuracy of the figures, but it's the accuracy of riding the actual movements from place to place. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And, you're bringing that to their attention, I think, is really important, because it gives it shows that they truly know the test, not just they ride.
Yes, they're not just riding the pattern. Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes thinking smart, and here's an example. So you're supposed to pick up the canter at A or between A and F, and the horse won't take the lead, and you try several times, and then you get to B to do the circle, and And since you didn't get the horse cantering, or it took the wrong lead and you brought it back, and it took the wrong lead and you brought it back, you wait till you're on the circle and then you get the canter. Well, now I always give them a higher score, like a 2 or a 3. That's a higher score because they kept trying.
Mm-hmm.
If they get the wrong lead and correct it right away, I can give them a 4. But let's say they get the wrong lead and they don't correct it.
Yep.
The highest I can give them is a 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go into the circle in the wrong lead. Well, then they're carrying that 2 on into that circle.
They could do
And
a
then-
fabulous canter circle.
Yes.
Right,
Not
right.
count.
No.
Above the level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about this, let's say you go to pick up the canter and you can't get it and you can't get it, and you circle the horse on purpose. Now you've done an air on purpose where the canter depart is supposed to be. So now the most you can get for the canter depart, even if on your circle you get the canter, the most you can get for that canter depart is a 1 or a 2. Okay. Now you get an air. So let's say you get an air with a 1. You're basically getting a 0 for that movement. But now you've got the correct lead and you go into that circle. And let's say you get a 7 for that circle. Do the math.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually better.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's smart riding.
And it's also training the horse for the future.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I believe in that. I believe that horses have to learn for the future too. And if you keep going boom, 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 wrong lead, wrong lead, wrong lead, frustration, 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 not only do you mess up 2 scores, but you confuse the horse in such a way that he's rattled. But if you do that circle and you take the air and you get the canter back from that circle, and then you canter on into the circle that you're supposed to do, and you say, okay, now I got to get an 8 on this.
Yeah.
Even if you only get a 7,
Yeah. Well,
get that attitude. Get
Well,
that attitude.
I like the idea of training the horse because one of the things that people ask me is it better for me to be like accurate in a transition, that I do my downward at C the way it's supposed to be, but it's abrupt? Or is it better for me to set my horse up and have a beautiful balanced transition that's later?
And I would say number 2.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's what I say, because
Yes.
otherwise you're teaching your horse pulling back on the reins as the downward transition aid.
Yeah. Abrupt and not
Yeah.
smooth is always going to get a lower score than lack of accuracy and smooth. Because we want to blend everything smoothly and harmoniously.
right.
And in fact, I've got a student right now who is working on doing a Grand Prix test. And we did the extended trot into the passage.
Mm-hmm.
And she got the horse rattled in that transition and made it rough. And then the rhythm got affected. And I said, start with your good extended trot, because the horse has a beautiful extended trot, but fade into your passage transition and make it smooth, and then develop a beautiful passage so you don't have a consistent, clear transition with one defined movement into the next defined movement, which is your ultimate goal.
Right.
Mhm.
But you're going to let the horse slow down and then gradually come into your passage and then develop your passage. So take a 6 rather than a 4.
Yes.
Yeah. So in a lower level, like first level, you don't want to see somebody shoot their horse out of a cannon as they go across the diagonal and potentially break or have a rhythm issue or hollow.
Exactly.
You'd rather see them take their time. And if it's one of the tests that has a transition score, your comment will be slow to develop or something like that, and it'll just be a little bit lower rather. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I have students like at first or second level, because that has all the transition scores. So you power up for your medium trot, and most horses can't sustain a medium trot for that whole diagonal. That's a long time for a horse to sustain a medium trot. So then they usually start to lose their balance and fall apart and get flat anyway, unless they're one of those super talented athletic horses that have them God-given. I call that factory installed.
Yeah.
But you can show a transition score. And you can engage the horse and collect the horse. The up transition is usually never a problem because you come out of the corner and the horses by the second level have learned that they're going to go for it on the diagonal. And usually by X, they start losing their balance and flattening out unless the rider is smart enough to re-engage them without making it too abrupt. But then if you try to engage the horse, and a lot of the terminology I use is needs to compress frame in corner, because you want to compress the horse to engage it. It's not, just the hind end.
Down.
Exactly. There you go. And letting it just die.
Yeah.
It has to re-engage and collect in the corner and show a higher pole and higher shoulders with the hind end coming under. That's what we're looking for. So you can show a transition, and the transition should show a different carriage and frame as the horse goes through the corner, because that's where the judge sees the profile.
Right.
They don't see the engagement while the horse is on the straight diagonal line. They come to their score from the profile of the horse going through the corner.
And that again is ringcraft. It's
exactly
where can the judge see what you're doing and where can the judge not see what you're doing?
Okay, so now I better write this down so I don't forget both of them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the canterdy part at K. And that is at Pre St. George, and it's at third level. And there's one at fourth level at F. And it's where all the judge at C can see is the hind end of the horse. Okay. And so you're on the rail walking toward that letter, and you have to pick up the canter at either K or F. And all the judge sees is the hind end. So if you use your outside leg and push the haunches in, well, then there you go. You're going to have a haunches in for your canterdy part. So you've got to keep the horse straight in preferably a shoulder 4 position, because that's what straight really is, since horses are wider behind than they are in front. And so a straight horse is where you get the inside hind to step more under the body to follow the track of the inside shoulder. Now, you, with your body and the horse's hind end, are completely covering up that letter from the judge. They can't see the letter K or F. They can't see it.
Okay.
If you canter before the letter and you ride into that corner with power and elevation of the shoulders, the judge is going to see the profile of the horse in the corner, and they're going to base their score on the engagement in the profile of the horse. But if you wait until you, with your body, is at the letter, and then the timing is even a half a stride late, the horse is already going to be entering the corner and past the letter by the time it picks up the canter, and then the corner is going to affect the quality of the canter depart. Right. So if you do that canter depart a stride or a half a stride too early rather than exactly or a half a stride late, you're going to have a higher score. that's ring savvy.
Mm-hmm. That's
because you can show, and that's one score. You can show the balance, and then you've got power. And then let's take third level test 1, where you R to S or whatever, shoulder in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or R to V or P, I can't remember what letter it is, but you go S to V, shoulder in, V to L, half circle, L to H, half pass. Okay. Now, that half pass is a really long half pass.
God, so long.
Yes. Now, okay, here's the thing that I notice so much. A 10-meter half circle. Riders think the half circle should be 10 meters. No, a half of a 10-meter circle is 5 meters. Mm-hmm. So they make the half circle way too long to begin with. And then immediately when they get to the center line, they start their half pass. So they're actually making it even more difficult and longer than they should be by making their half circle too big and starting the half pass right away. Mm-hmm. So if you make that half circle at V smaller, the judge at C is not going to see that. Now, the judge at B or E might see that you made it small, but it's probably not going to bother them if it's balanced and if it's smooth and supple, because they don't see that very often. Mm-hmm. So and the other thing I want to say real quick is, do not straighten the horse after a half pat, after a shoulder in, if you're going into a circle or a turn. You keep the bend. You keep the bend of the shoulder in. So many times I see people doing shoulder in, then they straighten the horse, then they start the half circle. No. You keep the bend of the shoulder in to go into that half circle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can tell I surprised both of you with that, but I see that.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Is your horse showing signs of metabolic dysregulation, weight gain, unhealthy insulin levels that can lead to unsoundness, issues with the structural integrity of the lamina within the hoof? InsulinWise has been research proven to support a decrease in insulin dysregulation. A synergistic blend of polyphenols and amino acids, InsulinWise helps maintain normal metabolic function and healthy insulin levels, support a healthy body weight and normal fat distribution, and sustain normal structural integrity of the lamina in the hoof. To see if InsulinWise, which is available through veterinarians, is right for your horse, speak with your vet, visit kppusa.com, or call them at 859-873-2974.
So then you get onto the center line after your small half circle, 10 meters, not your big one.
And you're balanced small.
And you put your horse in shoulder in on the center line. Okay? 1 or 2 at the most steps of shoulder in. Don't start your half pass until the front legs of the horse have gone past the letter L. It says L to H, half pass left. So don't start the half pass before you've gotten the horse past L. And people always think that their body, their exact body, is where things start. And they don't realize that there's 4 feet of horse in front of them and 3 feet of horse behind them. There's more horse. I've measured horses. I do that with the rider. I have them sit up and I take a whip and I measure from the rider's stomach to the horse's poll and ears, and then from the back of the rider to the dock of the tail. And there's always at least a half a foot or more of horse in front of the rider than there is behind the rider. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to get that horse, the front of the horse, past that letter. before you start your half pass. And then if you just create the bend, from that point, it's going to work.
That makes
And then
So-
you will have bend in that half pass.
yes.
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot. And you've gotten
Yeah.
that inside hind leg to come up and have more activity rather than just falling into it from the circle.
Yes. And every half pass should start with the shoulder in and end with the shoulder in. So let's say you're doing shoulder in left onto the center line. You put the horse in shoulder in left. You start your half pass left. So the shoulder in left has positioned the horse with the shoulders leading, but with the bend to do your half pass. Then as you approach the end, as soon as you get the front end to the rail, change the bend with your outside leg and turn it into a new inside leg and create a shoulder in position, the new direction. Every half pass should start with and end with a shoulder in. And the half pass movement has 3 parts to it. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And people just, they don't realize that there's 3 parts to the half pass, and they try to start the half pass with a half pass. No, that's not right. When you see a horse come through the corner, like in the Grand Prix or in 4th level, where you start the half pass out of the corner, you should start it with shoulder in position and then bring the haunches to your line that you're going to end with, and then push the haunches to that line and change the bend the new direction that you just arrived at.
So in first level test 2, it's a little bit like third 1 in that line goes on forever. It's from L all the way up to, to M.
Right.
And so how do you, the same thing, you're going to make a little bit more shallow half circle. Do you recommend that riders go so that the hind legs are at L before they start the leg yield so that they can show a little bit more crossing?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And just so you know, the judge at C cannot tell.
Yep.
They can't even tell if you're at X. Well, if you're on a straight line, they can tell. They can tell if they can see the letter A on either side of your horse, or if your horse is covering up the letter A. If your horse is covering up the letter A, you are on the center line and you are straight.
You are good.
Yes. But if I see A on one side or the other side of the horse, you're not on the center line. However, I can't tell if you stop 1 stride before X, at X, or 1 stride past X. Maybe even 2 strides.
Okay.
So I always tell all my students to go past the letter before they start the leg yield. Turn down center line, a normal turn. It's a half circle. Make a beautiful turn onto the center line, and that's part of your leg yield coming up score. And then don't start the leg yield so soon. And too many riders start it right away. And then a lot of times for my comments, I will say started early and arrived early. And I'll even say, don't start quite so soon, because I want to see more crossing.
Well, also when they start that soon, if you don't straighten your horse out of that half circle, if you make the half circle and immediately start into the leg yield, invariably you're going to run through the outside shoulder.
Exactly.
It's not going to be balanced.
Haunches.
So again, it's similar to what you said about the third level half pass or any half pass. You start with straightness. That's the beginning. Then you do the leg yield. That's the middle. Then you're straight again. That's the end.
Yeah.
And you ride your corner.
Yeah.
Speaking of corners.
Oh boy, another subject.
Yeah.
A big
Talk
one.
about this for hours.
Oh, yes.
And I guess corners are something that morphs as horses move up the levels.
I wanted to get an idea of your gives and takes with corners as people are moving their horses up the levels.
Well, I use it. Well, it depends on what movement it is. Sometimes I can use a corner as a modifier, but sometimes it's part of the movement. Like in training level test 2.
Okay.
It's change rein.
Love that test.
I do too. It's my favorite training level test.
Yes.
So, yeah, HXF, change rein. So you bend the horse right in the corner. No, left in the corner, and then straight, and then right in the next corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even in the directives. And the directives is another thing that riders are not always aware of, how the judge arrives at the score based on the criteria for the movement. But if you look at the directives after every movement, it says bend in corners, straight, and, whatever. And the directives tell you what the judge is basing the score on. And every movement has like the meat and potatoes and then the modifier. So like the halt rein back. What's the most important part of the halt rein back? There's a halt, there's a rein back, there's a move on after the rein back. So the rein back itself is the most important part, but the halt is a modifier and the move on afterwards is a modifier. And so sometimes corners can be modifiers as well.
Okay.
Like a canter depart. Many times there's a canter depart at C and then they cut the corner. Well, even if it's a good canter depart, because they cut the corner, I have to take something off. But I'm not going to take as much off for cutting the corner on a canter depart as I would if the horse threw its head. So see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say the horse throws its head and they go into the corner. Well, the throwing the head is worse because that's part of the meat and potatoes of the canter depart. But let's say the horse has a beautiful canter depart and cuts the corner. Well, I'll take a half a point off for that particular corner because the corner, even though it's important, it's not the meat and potatoes of the movement. The canter depart is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a great way of explaining it.
So I think something that a lot of people struggle with is when a judge says to them that they need to go deeper into a corner and they misinterpret that as trying to make a 90-degree turn.
I see your
and then other judges will say, don't go so deep into the corner that you bury the horse.
Exactly.
And then the riders get confused because they don't know what the expectations are. And as Stephanie said, the expectations change as you move up the levels. So is there a kind of quick and dirty way of saying, like at intro, they barely even show bend through a corner, and by second level, they're making an 8-meter volte through a corner?
Well, there's kind of a general rule that you don't need to go any deeper into the corner than the smallest circle in your test.
Okay.
Well, pretty much all tests have a turn down center line, so that's half of a 10-meter circle.
Right.
However, what makes me crazy is people that have been taught to go too deep in corners and they whip the shoulders around and throw the haunches in. That is not bending in a corner. And I run into that more in clinics than I do judging. Judging, what I see is people just don't understand how to ride the horse correctly through a corner. But so many times when they turn the shoulders and throw the haunches in, that's not bending, that's not balance, that's whipping the horse through out of balance and not in a connection. So I, as a judge, would rather see a less deep, correctly ridden corner than a too deep, incorrectly ridden corner.
Okay.
And again, like Aviva said, the depth of your corners goes up with the level, because the training level and the first level horse are not developed enough that they can maintain the correct balance and self-carriage to go into a corner as deep as a fourth level or Prix St. George or Grand Prix horse.
Of course not.
And so I say balance, smooth, comfort level, what the horse can handle, is way more important than size and depth of corners. However, as you train your horse better and better, you use your corners to prepare the horse and set the horse up for movements. And corners are so important, and riding the corner as a preparation is more important than riding the corner to show the judge you can go into a corner.
That's a great way.
So basically the theme here, Sue, is be accurate, but show correct training and be smooth and kind to your horse, even if you sacrifice a little bit of the accuracy.
It's a dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you have a dancing partner. And when you ride with harmony, the judge loves it because the horse is happy. The horse is your partner. And when you ride with trying to show, like many times I will, and I've written this many times, brilliance borders berserk. You know, and riders try to show the talent of the horse with all the brilliance and the power, but you can see the horse isn't ready for that.
Right.
And so if you're a smart rider, you can take a risk on the things that you can count on your horse for, but you back off and make it easier for your horse on the things that it's not ready for yet.
Well, sometimes less is more.
Many times, many more times than sometimes less is more.
I think that
go slower to get there faster.
Yes. That takes us to a question that I think a lot of our listeners would really like. You know, a lot of people are not riding super well-bred horses. They're riding what they can afford. They're riding what their riding school provides, whatever it is. And sometimes people can take these horses to shows and they might think that they had a phenomenal ride, but they don't get the score that they feel like they deserved. We all know that it can feel way different than it looks. But if you had a really talented horse in the ring who was ridden not so generously, who was abrupt transitions, and you felt like that horse was a little bit overfaced, and you had that horse compared to your average Joe at the local barn who's just nailing it with the geometry and looks happy and is hitting the marks. Tell us about those two horses from a judge's standpoint.
Okay, well, we all judges have a pet name for that horse. His name is Steady Eddie.
Aww.
And we all love Steady Eddie.
Okay.
Because Steady Eddie has been trained correctly, and he's with the rider, and his eye tells all. He's steady, he's working, he's got a workmanship quality to him, he has a work ethic, he's doing his best, he's in harmony with the rider, and we love the picture. And pretty much that's a 7 across the board. And I'm going to do a halt right here and refer to last week I was at the Young Horse Championships in Verden, Germany. And I was in the judges program there. There were 40 of us judges, and we had headsets on. And the judges that were teaching us were doing the commentary. And there was a horse that came in the young horse program. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely Steady Eddie. And the commentator was saying, this is a horse for every adult amateur out there. This is the kindest horse. This is the most wonderful horse. This horse is going to go out there and excel. But he doesn't have the gaits and the quality to compete with all of these top expressive horses. But he's going to be a fabulous competition horse for an adult amateur who wants a horse they can count on, depend on, enjoy, and cherish, and have success with.
And there's more of those people than there are professionals out there riding.
That can ride those.
Most people can't ride an 8 or a 9 mover.
Yeah. You know, I use one of my greatest trainers and friends, Dr. Max Gaywaller. He and I worked together many years ago, and he said to me one time, Susie, you know, we're breeding horses with these extravagant gaits, but we can't breed people fast enough to be able to ride them. And you know, the riders in Verden last week at the Young Horse Championships, they're riding, you know, gifted and talented program for exceptional horses and exceptional riders. Mm-hmm. But they're the peak of the pyramid. They're not the base. Right. The base of the pyramid is adult amateurs and all of these people that love horses, that want to learn to ride, and they need horses that can take them there. Mm-hmm. And I have trained many horses, and I have one horse that stands out. He was a thoroughbred curly cross.
Oh,
he was a Basque curly. Yes.
Interesting.
And he was a little athlete, and my student bought him, and I used to train for this lady that bred curly horses, and she had a very nice stallion, and he produced many very good sport horses. Her name was Sandy Hendrickson from Indianapolis, and his name was Spartacus. And so she named all the babies Spar something, and this one is Spar Trek. And
cute.
I trained, and he was a black and white paint, and I trained him starting from when he was 3 years old, and he's 25 now. And because he was a off breed, she won the championship every year in the curly division with him all the way through. I would show him, she would show him, I would show him, she would show him, and we got him to Prix St. George. And after she got her silver medal, she started letting my students show him. And 3 more kids and people got silver medals on that horse. And in 1 year, well, it was actually 2 years, but we did it all together at the award ceremony. 4 people got their silver medal on that little black and white pink curly horse. Yeah. And he was just an athlete, and he was a joy. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we took him to white fences, and Adam went, "Oh, we have a curly horse showing here. We've never had a curly before." But I've prided myself in all the off breeds being able to do it. And I remember one time I was judging in Georgia, and Mustang. I had a little gray Mustang. Mm. And that horse was showing 3rd level, and his changes were kind of flat, but they were clean, 6.5. Mm-hmm. And he was just a good boy, just a good Joe. Mm-hmm. And he got a 70%, and he was a Mustang.
That's amazing.
It's a 7 is
fairly good.
Yeah, it's fairly good, and you don't have to be an 8 mover to get a 7.
Right.
Exactly. And that's a 70%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sue,
Well, Sue,
you have been a wealth of knowledge. I was actually thinking a couple times, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this again.
It makes me almost want to get back in the show ring so that I can ride for you, Sue.
Yay!
Thank you for your wisdom and your wit. And thank you for sharing practical things for people to take a look at. I love Aviva's word for it, the ring craft, because really it is. It's riding a test is more than just knowing where to go, and becoming a better showman only enhances your horse. So thank you so much for sharing this with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really fun. I've really enjoyed this. And I look forward to hearing it on the radio show.
Excellent.